I'm really annoyed. This has been a great conversation with you, Skylar. It really has.
You.
Yeah. We're just the episode started right when it just popped up randomly. This is Skylar Patrick right here. All right. We're just yeah. That's slightly annoying. Everything we've just gotten into that was not covered whatsoever, and the unknown factor feels like a bit of a dingus, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, I should have started recording like the second you jumped on, which I normally do, in all sincerity. But the thing that the thing and 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 the thing. All right. So how quick do you think we can summarize everything we've went over in the past half hour?
Oh gosh, I'm not sure.
All right. Well, I have an excellent memory for things like this. You'd be quite amazed. But I do just want to go back into what we were initially discussing right when I realized that we weren't recording. I'm really going to be annoyed at myself for that, Skylar, and I truly, truly do
I understand
apologize.
the same way. You're all
Um,
good. So.
yeah. I can't believe I did that. But in the fact that you have created your own book coming out from IDW, and the fact that you are slightly worried based on the recent developments, which firstly, to everyone that affected, I'm sorry. I hope you all are well and everything works out okay. And like Skylar was saying, she would be lying if she didn't have worry based on the fact that it was very much a recent development. Why am I hearing myself back? Whoa,
Can you hear
Skylar.
me? There we go. It just turned off. My camera just turned off.
Okay, that was really weird.
That was really
What?
weird. It's like
Oh,
gremlins are happening tonight.
now I can hear myself. So I
What was
forgot
the
to
question?
record, and now this is going to pick up my voice twice because for some reason I can hear your end.
I can hear you, but you're much quieter than you were a little bit ago.
All right, look. I know this interview started in the middle, but I know you guys can hear me twice right now, and it's really screwing with y'all. So we'll be right back. You will definitely be on a PanCon at a later point in time, but I do want to push at least some of the what you've got coming out, Skylar. Which I mean, I know you've got Resonant coming out. I know. I think it's funny on a different note. We were talking about properties earlier, and you've worked on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and we were just discussing IDW. So I want to know your opinion because this is something me and Dave discussed in the most recent this month in comics. Hell, it might be an episode back actually in this month in comics. I got a lot of interviews stacked. I got so much editing to do, and then I screwed up and caused myself more editing, not doing that, and whatever. um, which is, do you think IDW was affected by the loss of GI Joes and Transformers?
I mean, I would assume so. I would assume because those are big IPs. So I would assume that it was definitely. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't say definitely, but I would assume that it was a factor in the layoffs. I assume it was a factor in money because that's always what it comes down to. But I don't know specifically. I'm really not privy to a lot of what's going on at IDW. Just that a lot of people that I know and had the opportunity to work with got let go, and so it was definitely a big shakeup with things. And I wish them all the best. And hopefully things continue to the creator own stories that they've got in the works and things that they're planning ahead in the future. Hopefully that all works out and they can build back. So.
I mean, because I know I'm currently reading I mean, I'd have to think of it, but I mean, I'm in the middle of reading the Lost Years, Run of the Lost Years from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which I know is the I'd say probably the biggest IP they currently have, based on the fact that they lost the two that they did.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of what other IPs IDW has. I honestly don't know off the top of my head, but I really do think it shows that properties like that play a bigger game in the comic industry than I think most people think they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, because like I said, you've worked on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I know for a fact when Dark Horse lost the rights to Star Wars and then Alien and Predator, respectively, when Disney bought them. I know that did them no favors.
Right.
You know, what overall effect do you think properties have in the comic book industry, both from, you know, in a situation like that where, you know, it's Buffy or Alien or the Terminator books or whatever you may have going into comics, or the other way as far as a comic getting transitioned into a different medium?
Hmm. I mean, I would like to think that media that comes into the comic world from another, from TV, film, animation. I would like to think that hopefully those people come into comics with them, because those do have such big fan bases. The hope is that you bring those fans along and usher them into the comics world and hopefully create future fans. Maybe they only are ever going to read Alien comics, or they're only ever going to read Transformers comics, but more readers is good. More readers is good. People coming in and wanting to embrace comics. Going the other way, I don't know. I think it's a little trickier that way, just because we have seen a lot of adaptations that have not gotten much of a lifespan, unfortunately, especially with streaming. It's things move through the streaming services, the streaming platforms really quickly. I think we had talked earlier about Paper Girls and Deadliest Class, and how quickly they didn't get the life that they should have gotten. Both amazing comics, seem to have been getting really good adaptations. I think the crews involved in both of those shows were in it. I think that they were really passionate about those shows. So it's disheartening, because it's hard to know what to expect. It's hard to get invested in stories that we're seeing adapted from comics now, because a lot of times they're getting canceled so quickly.
Do you think a lot of people, as far as execs from, like, you know, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, what have you think a lot of them are just out there looking for another Walking Dead?
Yep.
That's kind of sad, because I mean, like, look, the Electric Mountains are coming for me. That was hilarious. I and it came straight from the comics.
Right.
It was phenomenal. It was done really, really well. And yeah, with Deadly Class, when I found out there was only one season of it, I was I was a little upset. Like, that's not cool. Uh
Yeah.
yeah, it's yeah, and I haven't had a chance to watch or read Paper Girls. Honestly, I'm in the middle of Deadly Class as far as catching up on it. There was, as we said earlier in the part of this conversation that wasn't recorded, um, there are times where people jump in and out of comic books, and there was about a 5 year, 7 year stretch to where I wasn't reading like I would have loved to, for a multitude of reasons. But I very much delved in just real heavy, um, like neck deep, like into everything really quickly, and it's made me realize that it's crazy the amount of media that people consume. Like we said earlier, that they aren't aware it's comics. Like Dave told me,
Right.
you got people walking in every week. They made Walking Dead comic books. That's bloody well absurd to me
Yeah.
to even think that. But I do got to say, I love that. Firstly, for best comic book adaptation, Dread's been mentioned a couple times on the questionnaire. It has, and I think it's a great adaptation. I wish so much that they would have continued, because I want the Dark Judges in a film.
Right.
I want Judge Death in a film. I don't think society knows how much they need to see Mega City 1 with a Judge Death running through it. I'm telling you.
Right. Yeah. I'm right there with you. There's a lot of that too. I feel like there's a lot of ones where you're like, we should have gotten a sequel to this, and we just didn't.
Yeah. Yeah, and Carl, oh, his last name escapes me, but who played Dredd? Yeah, Carl Urban. Phenomenal Dredd.
Yeah, he was so good.
Yeah, phenomenal Dredd, man. He did it so well. But But the second one you mentioned, Tank Girl.
Yeah.
I love that. That's not something I ever honestly expected to see on the questionnaire.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no. There's just there's certain films. I'm like, I know that's a comic book film, but you don't ever expect anybody to answer it to be the best. I mean, I can't tell you how many times people have answered Endgame, like specifically,
Okay.
because
Mhm.
I mean it is a great comic book film. But yeah, Tank Girl. Why? I need specifics, Skylar, on why Tank Girl.
Well, I think I said Lori Petty is my heart. I love her. But I also feel like Tank Girl is unapologetically a comic book movie. Like it dives into the source material, the transitions from scenes are pulling from the actual comics themselves. Like they know it's a comic book and they're having fun with it. And it's a ridiculous movie, but it's fun as hell. And it's got all the 90s aesthetics to it. So yeah, it's I think I love when an adaptation isn't trying to hide the fact that it's a comic book and that it came from a comic book. And I think that's Into the Spider Verse is another example where like that's a comic book movie, a amazing one. Now that I'm sitting here thinking it, I should have put that in my list as well.
That's another one that's been
So
on.
Tank Girl was
Yeah,
the one that first came to my mind because I was like, I'm always drawn to adaptations that respect and seemingly love the source material. And I felt like Tank Girl, as silly as it is, I mean, Tank Girl's a silly comic. Um, it's still just unapologetically happy that it's a comic book story and sit back and enjoy it. Like let the craziness wash over.
that's entirely fair, man. I mean, I haven't. God, you're making me want to watch Tank Girl again. I haven't seen that movie in it's been a while, man. But it's an enjoyable film. I mean, I've read some of the comics as well, and I mean, you can definitely like if you watch that and you think this isn't a comic book movie, why?
Right.
Like I mean, they make it about as clear as they can throughout the film that it's based on a comic as far as just entirely in how it's done. Um, no, that was just a great answer. But then your other answer, like really, your other answer, it's like there's quite a few out there. Nothing came to mind as far as worst adaptation, or did you just not want
There's
to?
so many. There's so many bad ones.
You know what's
I mean,
funny?
we've been making comic book adaptations for since what the 40s, little Abner and all of them. So I mean, there's been comic adaptations forever, but there's been a lot of really bad ones too. So it's like I don't know. I was also trying to get it to you when you asked, so I didn't give you the most thorough answers on that one.
I'll tell you the funniest thing about that, and I so want to see somebody put this on a questionnaire one day. Is the fact that one of the best comic book adaptations, yeah, Dread. I can't argue that. They brought Mega City 1 to life. They did Judge Dredd justice. But I'd say one of the worst adaptations out there. I wouldn't say it's the worst, but it's definitely up there on the list. Is Judge Dredd. No offense to Stallone, but Judge Dredd shouldn't like. It's not supposed to
That's
be that
fair.
campy. It's
I,
not.
I would agree.
Yeah,
That's
like
totally
that.
fair.
That's not a campy character. That's in look. You had sugar. 10 years in the ISO cubes character. Oh, you want to resist? That's Shred. So I think it's just funny that there's an example like that in the mediums where it's like, well, they have the
Within within the same IP.
yeah, but the exact same. It makes me curious if there's any more like that. To be real honest, I'd love to see one that lived up to the mask.
Yeah.
They'll never do it.
No, definitely not. But I mean, you did make a good point. This is circling kind of far back to what you said earlier about, do you think streaming services are trying to find another Walking Dead? And I was like, I do think they are, but it's also like it's not the same TV environment anymore as it was when Walking Dead started. So I'm like, I don't think you can reinvent that or refine that. Like it's the streaming services and that whole model is going to have to change in order to do that, because we hardly give shows more than a season anymore to find their audience, and that just isn't how, especially comics, which generally tend to span years. You know, a lot of long running series, you know, it takes time for people to find it and fall in love with it. It takes time to develop those worlds so that people can fall in love with it. And if you're canceling shows after a season, you're not going to get the chance. So I feel like that's something that has to change if we want to see more successful examples like Walking Dead being adapted.
And I think you're right. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact, though, that a lot of streaming services are like, here's this whole first season. You know,
Yeah.
it's not like, here's an episode. Did you like that
Right.
episode? Wait till next week and see what happens. It's
And you know, I've seen this a lot online with like there's no filler episodes anymore. You know, you don't have the time to actually get to know characters because you get 10 episodes, 8 sometimes less than that per season. And it's, you know, efficient storytelling. That's cool. And you've got, you know, amazing set pieces and big stars, and like that's all very cool, but you don't get the time to fall in love with the characters as much unless you've already fallen in love with them somewhere else. So
that's
yeah.
to bring up another property that you've worked on. I mean, because you've worked on the House of Slaughter.
Mhm.
I know they're getting ready, or well, you've also worked on something that's killing the children.
Mhm.
Sorry, my brain's having to run through everything that, like I said, you've done a lot of work, and it's like it's just a lot running through my head. I know they're getting ready to adapt that.
Mhm. I'm very excited about, yeah.
I will be very upset if they do not do Erica Slaughter justice.
I think, yeah, I think that those are big shoes to fill. So we will see. But I'm excited to see. So I don't know. I've been pretty impressed with a lot of the casting that I've seen in a lot of adaptations. So I tend to have faith that I think they're gonna do her justice. Uh, I'm very excited to see who winds up in that role and what comes of it. I could see it being somebody who we don't know very well or who is lesser known, because I think that that would be very good for Erica Slaughter, you know, because she's such a mysterious character when you first meet her. So
Yeah, no,
see.
I don't think they should cast any kind of name for that. I think they need to find an actress who can embody that character who's but is not well known. I don't think it would serve
Yeah.
that show well to have a well known actress as that
Mhm.
character. But it's that goes back to my whole point. Um, as much as I'd love for them to just release a whole season at once, so I could sit and binge watch it as a fan of the comic, and you know I've read it; it's phenomenal. I
Mhm.
I want more. It's been a story where like sincerely they introduced this chick, and she's just such an interesting character in so many different ways. You know,
Yeah.
um, I I want to see them be able to slowly build that process.
Right.
You know, and there's part of me, especially with some of the other IPs that I've watched that they've put out, is worried that they'll rush it for the oh look, you know, or maybe hold back on the fact of like a kid getting ripped in half.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sorry, if you're making something is killing the children, you have to show something killing the children.
I don't know. I tend to feel like there's no like mincing words about that, like right off the bat in the first issue of the series. So I feel like they're probably going to go at it. That would be my guess, is that it's going to be more that we'll be surprised to how much they lean into it as opposed to how much they hold back from it. So that's my hope, and that's my prediction.
Same. See, because I'll be honest, with The Walking Dead, that was one of the things that threw me off the show. Is when the governor raised the prison, that baby needed to die. I'm sorry. I don't mean to sound like a terrible person or anything. I don't, and I know that sounds kind of terrible, especially for those that have just watched the show and have never read the comic. But uh, Judith's death in a lot of ways in that comic, in my opinion, drove a lot of characters forward. You know what I mean? Where I think lacking that in the show took a lot away from a lot of other characters. Just to what? Develop a character that never existed in the books?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, children must die and something is killing the children. If I don't
I
see a
mean, they
child
will.
yeah, I better see a child get ripped in half. I swear on my life. Like that's and I don't mean that like I want to see that. I want to see that. No, because there's
Right.
a reason if you look at past episodes, I've said I never want to see Cross adapted into anything. If you want to read Garth Ennis's Cross, if you want to consume it, go read the fucking comic book.
Right.
Okay?
Well, there's a lot of it.
Yeah, don't but please, for the love of God, no one make that a show. No one make that a cartoon. No one Garth has plenty of brilliant work out there that you can take of his.
Right.
If that's a comic. And that's the
Yeah.
only thing it ever should be. You know?
Right.
That's just yeah. So I don't do that as far as just give me something sick. Yeah. No, I
Right.
do
Right.
that
I
because
understand
yeah.
where you're coming from.
Yeah, I just want to make sure for everybody out there listening, they're not like, this dude's a sicko. He just
You want
wants
the
to see,
babies back.
like, he just wants to see children murdered and babies die. No, I think there are certain parts of the story, and I'm not a stickler like that because I know a lot of people that's an issue. What do you think about that, Skylar? As far as when you see people, oh well, it wasn't exactly like the comic, man. So it was like the whole thing with MODOK when they did it in Quantum Minium. That was a huge issue for people.
Yeah.
Like, do you think we have a problem with that as far as within the comic book community being upset when they don't nail the story?
I mean, I think that it's fair for fans to want, you know, the best adaptation in their minds. I don't think that they're wrong in wanting that. I think that typically where we're running into trouble is that there's too much expectation put on it because it is an adaptation. An adaptation doesn't necessarily mean a carbon copy, and we don't want it to be a carbon copy. They're two very different mediums. You know, I think what makes TV is different than what, or film is different than what makes comics. And so you're never going to be able to fully duplicate a comic into a television show or into a film. Um, I think that you know the intention of people making those adaptations is to make the best version of it that they can. I don't think that they're out here trying to actively tear apart your favorite character. You know, hands get tied in that process. There's a lot of I's and T's that have to be dotted by people who don't get to make the or that by people who make the final call that affects what the people on the ground are actually doing, what people are who are out there trying to write it, to film it, to sound design it. They don't get the final say in everything for the final product. And so I think that probably I think there's a little too much concern put into how faithful adaptations are. But I understand why fans want that. I understand why they want it because those are characters that they love. But again, they're two different mediums, and so I feel like you can't hold them to the same standards. You're going to have to make allowances, and I would say the same thing about book adaptations. A novel you're never going to be able to adapt a novel that you love into the same movie. Like they're never going to be the same, and I think it's just the same with comics and TV and film. So.
It's funny you say that because I mean, this is a long, long time ago, and I'm definitely dating myself. But I had read Starship Troopers before it ever became a film,
Mm-hmm.
and when I went and seen that film, I was pissed. Like I was adamantly annoyed at the movie that I went and seen. Now, mind you, I don't know, in my early 20s at best, probably younger. I'd have to look up when that film came out, to be real honest, and comparatively do math. But it's been a while, because I look at it now and I'm like, oh, okay, so no, this is a good film that they adapted from this book because there's certain things in the book like you could never have the bugs look how they looked in the book because they never described how the bugs looked in the book. You know,
Right.
that ding y'all just heard was something export, and I apparently needed to hit mute on my laptop. My bad, but there's more episodes coming for y'all out there. Editing's a bitch. Um, and the same thing with the Hitchhiker's Guide. Like I watched the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and then I went to the book, and it is a thing where I think you're right. You can never fully adapt something. I think it's sad just how much people fully expect that. Like,
Right.
and then I think this is probably the worst. The worst that I've seen this, and I'm about to piss some people off, including my brother, is the Star Wars community.
Okay.
You know, I was just out of curiosity. Would you agree?
Yes.
Right? Like they do. They're like, that's not exactly like this book that I read. But well, it's like, first off, that's Disney, and they literally told you all those books aren't canon anymore, and they're gonna do whatever the hell they want. They're trying to make good entertainment. Calm down, Luke. Calm down. I
Well, I
just
think that, the I'm trying to think of how to articulate this the right way. I think I understand when people get upset that adaptations aren't faithful enough to the standards that they want them to be. At the same time, I feel like that's kind of operating on the assumption that film and TV are the ultimate, like that's where everything is. Like that's the ultimate end game. And I don't feel like that's true. Like just because there's a poor adaptation of a book you love doesn't mean that book goes away. You still have access to the thing that you love. And so I think it's really more of kind of trying to take a second and be like, well, just because it's adapted doesn't mean that's the ultimate interpretation of this media that I love. And so that's always where I land on it. And that's why I tend not to get too caught up in how faithful an adaptation is to something. Because I have characters and stories that I love, and I get worried and when I hear they're going to be adapted because I'm like, well, there's no way they can possibly do that. But I still have the source material. I still have that access to all of the Star Wars books that that are no longer canon. They didn't disappear. They're a little harder to find, but that those stories still exist. I can still enjoy them. And so I understand because TV and film are so universal. It's easier to find a show and find a movie than it might be to find the book or the comic sometimes, just because you've got national global streaming, you've got various ways to access TV and film, but it's not the crest of the mountain for every bit of media that's made.
fully agree because I mean the source material, in my opinion, is always going to be the top of the mountain as far as it's like, look, this is where it all came from. Like if you got a problem with The
Right.
Walking Dead,
And
go
there
read
can
the
be
comic.
another mountain over here, but it's a different mountain.
Yeah,
Like
yeah. But I mean, the Hitchhiker's Guide. Like if you hated the movie, there's totally this book over here. Like and
right. Right,
there's
exactly.
yeah, there's so many different examples of that that are endless. To be frank, I'm curious though, with you working on what you're currently working on, creator owned.
Mhm.
What would you do if someone walked up to you, like say it goes really well? It's just comic book just does as damn well as it can, and
Yes.
and all hopes that it does, Skylar. In all sincerity, but someone walks up to you after that happens, he goes, "Hey, I want to buy this to turn it into a film, but here's what I'm doing: I'm giving you this money, and you're fucking off."
I mean, I think a lot of times that's what happens. A lot of times, and I think that it depends on the situation. It depends on who buys it and who's involved and who the writer is. That kind of there's a lot of dependencies. Um, but I think for me personally, it would have to be a lot of like asking what they want to do with it before I would feel comfortable just selling and fucking off. I mean, depending on how big the check is, I'm a person after all. Um, but I think it just depends on who is interested. Like I wouldn't sell my story, the creator-owned book that I'm working on to like Netflix, because they have a history of axing their stories so quickly. It just kind of depends, I think, on who was interested and who was inquiring.
Well, let's make this question more specific. Is there a director that could walk up and tell you that, and you'd be like, "Oh shit, okay." Especially if you noted that they cared for the source material.
Say that last part again.
If you noted that they actually like knew and cared for the source material.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I feel like this would be a good question to ask. My co-creator is Jordan Alseca. He's my co-writer on the book. I feel like he'd have some good suggestions. But I tend to feel like I think Catherine Bigelow would be very good in doing it. I would feel comfortable if she was attached. It's an espionage thriller. So it's a grounded story. It's kind of a dark and sexy espionage erotic thriller. So I feel like she would do a good job with it. I would feel comfortable with it in her hands, because I think she would also handle the more military government aspects of it very well. I'm not sure who else I would feel like super, super confident with, but that's the first name that comes to mind for me right now. I'd have to think about it, but that's my knee-jerk reaction.
Fair enough. All right.
I feel much more comfortable entertaining that deal if she was like attached.
Fair enough, man. I like how you're like, it's an espionage, an erotic thriller. No wonder you're doing art for Money Shot.
I don't think it hurt that I was doing some erotic stuff on my own, and then Money Shot was coming back. So.
I love. Can I say shout out to Tim, man? I love, because most of the stuff I've read from Tim was very, very horror based. That was a definite twist on what I'm normally used to from Tim Seeley. But on that note, man,
Yeah.
you've worked with a lot of people at this point. Is there someone out there where you're like, I want to draw what they write?
Think about that. I feel like I would be interested to work with Tom King. I might be a little intimidated, we talked about Superman and the supers earlier. I'm not sure if that got recorded. But Supergirl is near and dear to my heart, especially, and Woman of Tomorrow, I think, was just a masterful series. And so we would be very, very humbled for the chance to work with Tom. Who else? I mean, I'd like to work with some of my friends. I feel like I don't get the chance to work with a lot of my peers. Liana Kangas is somebody I think I would like to work with. We've done some small collaborations in like short stories and things like that, but we've never really had the chance to make anything, bigger than, a few pages. So yeah, I think my big hope would be that I get to work with a few more friends out there. But yeah, I think a big one for me also might be Joelle Jones. Joelle Jones is one of my biggest inspirations, especially as an artist. And it's been very amazing to watch her go from, predominantly art to doing both. Like she's, Lady Killer was her story. She was also writing Lady Killer. But seeing her, she's doing a lot of writing now. And yeah, I think I would probably lose my mind if I had the opportunity to work with her.
Oh, don't lose your mind. I don't think you'd do well for your art. I'm just saying.
No, well, you never know. It might actually help.
I mean, that's true. They say most artists are crazy. I'm like, to that end though. As someone that makes hip hop, and since I've started running this show, I've noticed there's a very large difference in those that make hip hop music as opposed to those that make comics. By that I mean, like we were discussing earlier, as far as properties and the part that didn't get recorded, and that's gonna irk my brain. I'm not even gonna lie, Skylar.
We'll put another one in.
Yeah, it was just phenomenal conversation. We were discussing IPs and the fact that some people will, come and read a comic that's based on something they like otherwise, whether it's, Alien, Predator, either Rick and Morty, SpongeBob. I mean, the list is pretty endless as far as what's started somewhere and ended up in comics in some form. But, you're like, they may never read that or anything but that. And it's like, you see hip hop artists are like, listen to my music. My music. And that's pretty much the message you get. But I feel like in the comic book community, it's like, hey, read comic books. I make some comic books. You should check them out. But, you should really read comic books. Why do you think in the comic book community, it's such there is such a that it's not. I mean, people pitch their own book, and sure they want to sell their book, and I mean that is the ultimate point. But it's like they more just want to see more people reading comics. Period. Overall, what do you think causes that?
I mean, comics is a very small industry. It seems bigger than it is, and I think it's full of underdogs. And comics, I think the comics industry is an entertainment underdog. It doesn't seem like it should be because there's so much source material there for other media, but I think it's a very hard industry to make a living in, and it's always been a very hard industry to make a living in. And so my experience working in it is that it's been very welcoming and very inclusive, and people want to help one another. There's always going to be there's always going to be individuals and corners in any industry where that isn't the case. But I've been very fortunate to interact with a lot of people who want to see one another succeed, and they want to see one another's books succeed because it's the rising tide, all ships rise. So I think, especially in a small industry, that there isn't a lot of money in there. We're all doing it because we love it. You're not going to get rich making comics, and so I think there's a camaraderie there.
You say that, but I'm pretty sure some people got pretty damn rich making comics.
Well, that's very much. I think the people who got most rich from making comics don't make comics. They're Marvel and DC and some of the larger corporations that are making the big bucks. That's where the money is currently. I think the people, just your average creators who have made a lot of money, they had a good product at the right time, and there's luck factored into it. I think a lot, like most entertainment industries, there's so much luck and so much networking. So it's one of those things where your average person is not going to get rich making comics. No, even if you're really, really good, it's a hard game. So we do it because we love it, and so we want more people to enjoy it. We love it, so we want to show people why to love it, and we want to help each other out along the way. Hopefully, that's the hope, I think, for most people.
Well, and not even that. I think comics are great for the fact that they very much promote literacy, and I think especially if it's someone that's like I just doesn't like books and reading books, then you can show them this, and it's pictures, and all you have to read is the words, as long as you're not starting them out with like something by Neil Gaiman or Watchmen, or because let's be frank, that's a book worth of that's a short story worth of words and any of that stuff. Again, all great books. I'm not saying anything against them. I'm just saying that's not where I'd start somebody who doesn't like to read.
Fair, yeah.
Yeah.
This is a wordy.
Yeah, because they're very like, I'm not going to be like, hey man, check out V for Vendetta. I know you don't like to read,
Right.
but you'll love it. Yeah, no,
Throw them in the deep.
bad idea. I mean, you wanted to start. You would want to know what they were a fan of, and then start them out with something that wasn't near as wordy as that. Again, great book, but it is something. And I've even read. I don't know if this is true. I might just be spitting facts that I haven't actually checked, but I'm pretty sure it says like per word, like if you took a bunch of comics compared to a bunch of books, they're not as repetitive in what they say. Like there's a greater use of the English language within comic books than there actually is in a typical book. A typical book tends to be more repetitive in its uses of words. So even in that, you're expanding the vocabulary, as well as, like I said, you're helping literacy of kids. I think it's we've had a past guest, man. I want to say it was Dave Whalen. I swear I'm probably wrong, and he can he can smack me with his correct hand. He runs correct-handed comics. He's left-handed. That's why I say that. Um, but and he said he's brought it in. No, no, no. I'm 90% sure it was Dave because we just talked about it on the Pentagon. He brought comics into his class, and he sees kids that just hate reading, and now they're absolutely,
Yeah.
just thumbing through these things, talking about I want more. And I think that's something for some reason I don't understand why people don't get that as far as it being a great source of getting a child to read. Why do you think there's that misconception still? Why do you think people look at comics and go, "Oh, they're just funny books"? Look, Plush is funny, but it ain't a funny book, all right?
Right. I think more recently there is more of an understanding, especially with librarians. You know, I know a lot of librarians. My mom's a librarian. I've got friends that are librarians, and I think that there's a definite understanding of how important, you know, graphic novels and comics can be for children. Um, and so I think that that's changing. I think that that's been a market that's been growing. It's one of the fastest growing markets in U.S. comics right now is the young adult and middle grade books. And so I think that is there's more and more stories being told in that format now. And so I feel like that's in the process of changing. If it's not, if, you know, some people might already say like, oh, you know, we know that already. So maybe it's already changed, but I think it's within over the last 10 years has been kind of steadily moving in the direction of understanding that graphic novels and comics are very helpful in promoting literacy in young people. I think where you run into problems is that a lot of people who don't read comics or don't have any experience with comics think that's where it stops. And they don't give any thought to comics and stories that are being told now that are not necessarily for younger readers. They're really complex, interesting, vast stories being told in comics right now. And I think people just kind of write it off as, well, those are children's books. Those are things for kids because it is a visual medium. So I think more so now, I think historically people didn't think about comics for kids and now are thinking about comics for kids as far as promoting literacy. I think now you kind of run into, well, they're starting to see how important comics can be for children's literacy, but we still haven't quite breached that disconnect between comics being like a literary art form and a children's pastime. And so I think there's still a big gap there that it has been shrinking for, you know, how important it can be for children's development. That gap is shrinking, but I don't think we're shrinking the gap between it's a children's pastime and it's an art form that tells very complex stories. So
Firstly, puppy. Sorry, I had to. I love
there's
animals.
two puppies. Yeah,
Yeah,
they've been moving around back.
and I just seen one just walk past camera. It's like puppy. Yeah, I have
Yep,
one to interrupt you. Just be like
just a little exciting.
doggy. Yeah, I get a lot. I love animals, man. I love animals. Yeah. But I do think you make a valid point. But look, like we brought this up on the part I didn't record. I'm gonna so be pissed at myself for that. Like
Hey,
you,
we had really great talk, just buds, so it's all right.
everybody just missed out. We just had a conversation about the WGA and the strike and like so many other topics, and it's just yeah,
We're pro WGA strike.
yeah. We are definitely pro WGA strike, and I totally understand. I'm not and Chat GP, AIR, this that.
Give me just 1 second. My
And
dog's
there's
barking.
an angry dog. Quick at it.
Sorry about that. This is the culprit who was barking at his shadow.
Oh, puppy. It's okay. Sometimes you gotta bark at your shadow, man. I get it. It's a little frightening.
Scary when you're small.
But no, back to what we were saying. Like as far as literacy, like if you look at the Deadliest Bouquet, that is a
Yeah.
very complex piece of literature. You know.
Right.
And then if you look at something to, let's just throw it completely to another end of the spectrum. Plush, which I still need to read issue 6, is a very complex piece of literature in a totally different way than the Deadliest Bank or the Deadliest Bouquet is, you
Right.
know. But they are very very complex as far as studying human beings at again at totally different levels, But they're things that can give you a great deal of thought about from
Yeah.
just generations and certain secrets being passed, and you know and elder the older member of the family kind of just losing it, um, to we don't accept people being different as a society, you know, and we really should because they might eat you.
Fair.
you know, it goes both ways. I'm just saying. I mean, that's a quick just synopsis of both those books.
Hmm.
So I think it's sad we lose that. Part of me's like, there's this other part of me that's like, I feel like I need to let you go, Skylar. We've been on this call. I don't even know how long we've been on this call. It's been a while.
Oh, it's been good. It's
Part
been
of
a
me,
good call.
part of me, part of me's kind of hungry. There's another part of me that's way more annoyed than I am hungry that I didn't go into the rest of this. But I do, like I said, I'm behind the WGA as the part of the conversation that was missed because I'm a dingus was like, look, if you're upset because oh no, you might not see the most current episode of your favorite show. Look, there's plenty of material for you to go watch, right? Go read a comic, go read a book. You
Right.
should not be that upset that you have to wait a little bit of time so people can get paid properly.
Absolutely. And your media is going to be better if somebody's able to meet their needs, if somebody's able to pay their rent and feed themselves, then your shows are going to be better.
Yeah, because then they ain't got to worry about running a side hustle so they can
Exactly.
make their rent, their payment. They can just focus on doing the job of creating the script or the art or whatever that may be, which is a whole other conversation we get in on the AI, the chat GT, and this. So that was such a great conversation that I'm annoyed I can't share with everyone in its entirety. But it was a great conversation with you, Skylar. Now, for everyone
You too.
that wants to check out any of Skylar's works, there are all kinds of links in the description, right? From her website to all kinds of other things, man. Just there's links. All right. But I want to let you know if you've enjoyed the part of the interview that y'all got to see. Oh Jesus. Right? I want you to send I so need to start, yeah, a dragon, right? With some exoskeletons. Or the exo wait, no, what was it? Yeah, the exo squad action figures. Really, I loved those things, Skylar.
Right?
I
And the show.
when I read that, I was like, nobody's ever mentioned a toy that I'd like to have too. That I had when I was a kid. That's a first. So you got a first in the questionnaire, right? So yeah, you send her either a dragon or a Pegasus or both with just a bunch of Exo Squad action figures, right?
Yes.
Now, if for some reason some part of this interview that you were able to see, because there was a lot of it that probably would have annoyed some of you that you weren't able to see, right? Annoyed y'all, right? And you're like, man, I don't like Skylar, right? What I want you to do is send her a skinwalker that smells of microwave fish.
I think they might smell like that as it is. So,
I mean,
see, they're ratty.
I could believe that, but
Yeah.
I definitely wouldn't go messing around in oh damn, the name of the fucking farm's gonna escape me. Really, the Skinwalker Ranch. Yeah,
Inch.
if
Yeah.
I were you, Skylar, I would not recommend going there whatsoever.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, according to your answer, I don't think it's someplace you're gonna go play. Though
Yeah.
I
Oh, I
do,
don't mess around out in the wilderness,
though
especially ever.
uh, check it out though, Skylar. I got a theory on how you get superpowers. Right, you might be able to get flight or super strength if you just go take a bunch of DMT and walk around the Skidwalker Ranch.
I feel like that I'll just die. Like,
I mean, that's a definite possibility too, right?
right.
Let's be real honest, right?
Like I would just fall in a ditch and then it's over. Just last time they saw her was at Skinwalker Ranch, high as a kite.
Tripping on DMT, and then Skylar was just
It'd be an
gone.
amazing obituary, though. So
Look, it would be a hell of a story, and as long as you already got your comic out and released, I guarantee it'd start selling
right,
like fucking hotcakes.
right. That's probably true. But please support the comic while I'm alive.
For real, do that. If she said 2024, there's not going to be links to that in this
Nice.
particular interview, but we will definitely bring on Skylar for a later PanCon, as well as some interviews in the future when she gets to the point where she is dropping that. Make sure you click all the links in the description. Like, subscribe, hit that thumbs up, notification bell, wherever you're listening to this. Click to where you can listen to more of it, because there will always be more madness, because this is a quest, and the quest, ladies and gentlemen, is to get your comic on. Have a good night.